So can everyone put their left hand up for me? Everyone, left hand. Now can you keep your hand up if when your phone rings in your pocket, it vibrates, you look at it right away? How many people keep their hand up? Pretty much everybody. So we're going to talk today about habits. It's why you do what you do. So I'm going to go through 3 different metrics. The first one's going to be conceptual model from Stanford. There'll be a model from the New York Times. And by the end of this talk, you'll be able to understand why you do what you do. I'm really excited. This is the first time I've ever given this talk publicly, but something I've been thinking about now for over 4 years as a food psychology researcher, understanding why we eat what we eat, working with world-class global behavior change companies, and also just living and doing these things myself. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to clarify first different levels of behavior. When you talk to a marketer or someone who studies consumer behavior, what they first talk about is the actual behavior. That's what you do. Then there's an attitude. It's why you do it. And finally, the top value, which is usually the one that no one realizes, is who you are and why that behavior and that attitude make you who you are as a person. So I drew a line. It's the line of consciousness. And when you look at a behavior, when you look at anything, that's the line below what you see. So I'm looking out into the world. I can see your behaviors. You're taking notes. You're drinking coffee. You're videotaping. But I don't know why you do it or who you are as a result of that. Can anyone name a behavior? Just shout it out. Something that you do. It could be regularly. Anyone?
Eating.
Eating. Anything else? Walking. Brushing your teeth. Perfect. So that's a really good segue. Behaviors are something that you do that someone else can see. That's the basic definition of a behavior. And every single person in this room does behaviors. You're doing something right now. What you talked about, brushing your teeth and eating, so those are habits. Habits are the older brother, the more mature brother, the one who has a really nice car and knows everything about girls, and who you want to grow up to be like. Habits are things you do that are behaviors you don't think about anymore. Every single behavior wants to grow up and become a habit. So now I want to introduce these 2 theories. The first one from Stanford, the second one from the New York Times, and last I'm going to introduce my own theory, and this is the first time I've ever presented this. So let's talk about BJ Fogg. And BJ Fogg is in the corner over there. He's a real guru. So here he is meditating, something that he's made a habit for himself. And BJ Fogg uses an equation named B equals MAT. And what that means is that behaviors occur only when motivation, ability, and a trigger line up at the exact same time. So motivation is exactly what it sounds like. Do you want to do this thing? Think of it as a scale of 0 to 100. The ability. Can you actually do this? Do you have the knowledge or the resources, or whatever it is to actually make this happen? And lastly is a trigger. And that's usually one thing that makes you, it's the catalyst that makes you do a behavior. So let's go through an example I hear a lot about. I'm too busy to exercise. And what could that mean in this equation? Motivation. It's Monday morning. I had a rough weekend, a lot of studying, maybe a lot of drinking, and for college students, I don't really feel like it. Now ability. Do I have a gym membership? Do I have clothes in my locker? Do I have time? That fits under ability also. And last is the trigger. Is there someone who's going to say to me, hey, did you go to the gym today? Or hey, are you meeting me at the gym today? So if none of these things happen, if I don't have a gym membership, if I'm not motivated, and I don't really have anyone triggering me to do this, it's not going to happen. And that's an extreme example, but most other examples will miss one of these pieces. So if you have 0 for trigger, or 0 for ability, or 0 for motivation, or low on any of those, it's probably not going to happen. Now let's talk about a second model. This one is a little bit newer from the New York Times. It came out in a book last year, The Power of Habit. And Charles Duhigg is a real brainiac about behavior. So his model goes through 3 separate pieces: cue, routine, and reward. So now going back to the iPhone example we started off with, and I want you guys to also notice that I knew most of this class was right-handed from watching you for the whole semester as a student. And when I asked you to put your left hand up, that was a non-natural behavior for most of you. So when you asked, if I said raise your hand, you're going to raise your dominant hand, because that's usually the one that you raise. So going back to the iPhone, when the phone vibrates, the cue, the routine is to take it out of your pocket, swipe to the right, and look at your message usually, or look at the picture, whatever it is. The reward is a little bit of dopamine. It's a little bit of pleasure, or a little bit of a good feeling that you get from listening to your friends, laughing at whatever the dumb picture is, or just from that process of holding your phone and getting something out of it. So I want to note that these models are not conflicting. They're actually both simplified ways of understanding behavior, and when you look at them together, so Duhigg plus Fogg, you get a better understanding of why people do what they do and how they do it. So last, I want you to close your eyes. And this is a new model. All right, actually, you can keep them open. You can do one eye closed if you want to. But I see you doing it. So this is a new model that I've never actually introduced before. This is the first time. And there's a lot of research behind this, but I just wanted you to imagine you're leaving the library. And you have this huge 5-gallon bucket of water that you're carrying. What do you want to do with it, Tim? You want to keep carrying it?
Oh, put it down.
You want to put it down, or better yet, you want to get rid of the water. Because you want to go to class, you want to go to a party, you want to go get a drink, you want to go back to the library if you're really, really ambitious. So you dump the water down the slope. Where does it go? Downhill, but it just kind of goes downhill. So when you first do a behavior, you're dumping water down the hill. It goes where it goes. You don't really think about, this water's going to go from my bucket, or maybe in my water bottle, down the slope, and it might hit Eric in his nice new shoes, hit a friend. You're not really thinking about the consequences. You just want to get rid of the water. So over time, if you keep doing that, if you dump your 5-gallon bucket, or a 50-gallon bucket, or a 5,000-gallon bucket, doesn't really matter. Down the slope every single day, it's going to make a channel. It's going to make a stream. That's what water does. It's going to wear away the earth and leave a little stream behind it. If you kept doing that, now you're going from behavior to habit. The more times you do something, the less conscious it becomes. This is why you brush your teeth without really thinking about it. If you're in the shower, you probably use the same order of shampoo, face wash, body wash, whatever you do, the exact same order every single day. The more often you do something, the less stress you put on your mind. So what happens if you keep doing a behavior is that it starts to form this canal. And when you form a canal, over time it will form a river. This is the Amazon River. And if you looked at the analogy that we had before, pouring the water down the hill, the Amazon River is not a very efficient way to do that. It wastes a lot of space, a lot of time, and it just kind of curves through. So when we use food psychology to design habits, to shape habits, what we're doing is saying that if you want to get from point A to point B, you want to get from the Amazon River to the sea, you have to do it in the straightest line possible. That's the most efficient way, and it's the most effective way to make someone do the best possible habit from a series of behaviors. So what happens is if you have the Amazon River and it goes for a long, long time, if you do a behavior for a long, long time, and it becomes a deeply ingrained habit, it's like the Grand Canyon. It's worn away. So when you think about behavior change, think about filling the Grand Canyon. So to wrap up, we discussed different models of understanding behaviors and habits. We defined our terms, and we introduced the idea of the flow model of habit design. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
All right, questions for Daniel while we write down final comments?
Come on, let's go.
How was that last model developed, or where did that come from?
So I was sitting on a bus on the way back from New York City, and I was thinking about this speech, and I like BJ Fogg's model, I like the do-leg model, but it doesn't really answer behavior change. So there are different types of behaviors, or different types of habits, but none of them really make sense. When you think about, so I study obesity, I work on obesity, and really reversing obesity, and people always say, do you target children, or do you target adults? I've worked on both. And the challenge is that you have people who can't form habits because they're too young and they don't have enough autonomy. And you have people who have such deep ingrained habits that they have this mind of the Grand Canyon. So how do you backfill the Grand Canyon? And I'll talk about this in my next speech, but I think the solution is actually to help people form the best possible habits at the beginning when they're still malleable and not when they're deeply ingrained like the Grand Canyon. Yes, in the back?
Is there research behind that model, or is that just what you have the left side?
Yeah, so that's based on more neurobiology. So when you actually form a habit, it's a jump from synapse to synapse. And it's based on, it's in this book a lot, The Power of Habit. It's based on BJ Fogg's actual academic research. And a lot of the biology and neurobiology research will support this idea that when you form a behavior into a habit, it becomes deeply ingrained in your subconscious. And changing the subconscious, even Freud went back to, is a deep challenge of psychology. Any questions in the front?
Can it be done though? The reversing subconscious like that?
Can you change, can you clarify the question?
I mean, sorry, like you said, it ingrains as deep as the Grand Canyon type of a thing in your subconscious, but like in your mind, can you change the synapses if you change your habits?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. The question is, can we change behaviors once they're subconscious? And there are a lot of people who do that. They use electroshock therapy sometimes, but it's really, really difficult. So even using our own behavior model, if the end goal is to change a behavior, it's a lot harder to change something that's already established than something that's not established. But it is possible. Eric?
If there's a genetic predisposition to obesity, how would you be able to change like the Grand Canyon carved out?
So Eric's question was about genetics and the role of obesity. And there's really two pieces of obesity. There's genetics, which we think makes about 40 or 50% of whether or not someone is obese. There's also the environment. And the environment is when we have control over. You know, so when you go outside, the types of foods that are available to you, the price, the convenience, the taste, those are all things that we control, not that your genetics control. I think that's an interesting question and one that I'm not a specialist in as far as the heredity of it, but definitely a valid point that I could look into further for you. Any
All
other
right,
questions?
we're running out of time, so let's move on to